Greetings and salutations. My name is David Georgeson. I'm the Director of Development for the EverQuest franchise, and we're here today to talk about Reign of Fear, the new expansion for EverQuest. And we're here with Jennifer Chan. Jennifer's the lead programmer for the team. Kevin Leidy, who's the art director for EverQuest, and then you all know Adam Bell, the lead designer.
Hello.
And so we're basically this session is going to be pretty informal. We're going to talk back and forth with the hopefully with the chat room here, with questions and answers about the expansion or anything that you want to talk about. But before we get into that, we just wanted to mention that of course the expansion launches soon. So November 28th, which is a Wednesday, the Wednesday after next, the expansion will be live and launched. And so. Right now, I'm not seeing a lot of questions down there, so this could be a very short show. But what we'll do is we'll talk a little bit about a couple of topics, and hopefully a few questions will pull up in the meantime. So we've got obviously we went through all the zones and everything last time we did one of these webcasts. So you and Alan were here, and we went through all the zones and the background and things like that. But we only very lightly touched on some of the features that were coming up. Obviously, there's some stuff that everybody knows about, like the level 100 stuff and everything like that. But they may not know very much about the Aggro Meter or some of that kind of stuff. And I thought maybe while we're waiting for some questions to come in, we could maybe mention a few things.
Well, the Aggro Meter, we decided to go with a simple, more balanced concept. We went with, just currently a simple meter that tells what your level of hate is, and what the level of hate of the second most hated person might be. Or if you are not the most hated, it tells you who is the most hated, so that you at least know who the tank is. And we also decided to pepper that information inside other windows. So it's in your player window, it's in the target window, it's also in the group window. So you can see where everybody in your group is. And it's also in the extended target window.
Cool. And luckily that was just enough time. We actually have some questions. So one of them's a softball, and just to mention it real quick because we're talking about the expansion. Who is it? Freddie C is asking, what's the main story? What's the main storyline for the Reign of Fear?
Well, with Reign of Fear, we're continuing the story that we started in House of Thule. So, as most people know, in House of Thule, mysterious beings captured all the Thules in the House of Thule and tricked the Norathians into killing Khazak Thule. Then these mysterious beings ended up being the Alarans, who we met in Vale of Alaris,
right.
Who then stole Khazak's power. But then, being the Norathians, we all went over there as well and destroyed their god.
Tit for tat.
Right. And destroying their god released Khazak's power.
Yeah.
Now, Khazak's power has sort of been just generally floating around for a little bit, but it started actually to collect into these shards of fear, some larger than others. And these shards have started falling to Norath. And
as solid objects.
Right. Solid shards of fear. They look like purple crystals, and you'll see them all over the place in this expansion. And they fell in interesting places, like they fell in the Common Lands, broke a hole down through Befallen, so that there's the new chapter house, which was under Befallen. It fell through Dragon Necropolis, which gave us the breeding grounds, which was hidden under Dragon Necropolis. One of them fell in forest zone in Vale of Alaris.
Brain farts are fun.
The Beast Domain.
Yeah.
And a tree there, grew around one of the shards and
right.
became very big. And
cool.
Of course, one fell near Zorb, who they freed Zorb and he took over it. And then you have his zone, the Valley of Zorb.
Cool. So basically, the story ties everything together.
Yes.
Great. We are finally getting some other questions here too. There's a question here about raid vendors, how they will work exactly.
They work very similar to the way they did last expansion. When you complete a raid, you will get a few tokens, and with those tokens, you'll be able to buy things from the vendor for raids that you have completed. So you must complete a raid in order to get it.
Right.
We did not put the gear from North TOV on there, North Temple of Ishan, but the rest of the expansion's gear is on those vendors.
Cool. Cool. There's not a lot of varied questions so far. Most of them are about systems and stuff, but we can go through a couple of these other ones. Will there be expansion-themed SC items in the marketplace?
We currently do not have any.
No, I don't think there are any.
And we typically don't.
Yeah.
It's an interesting idea, but for now, most of the fun items like that you would get actually come from buying the expansion.
Right. It's been done before in other games.
Yes.
Even in our franchise. And how will group progression work for group gear? Does that question make sense?
Yes. We decided to shorten the tiers this expansion. Previous expansion we've done 3 to 4 tiers. This time we decided to only do 2 tiers. Basically, what we really dropped was the typical crossover tier. What we do.
Yeah. So
the first set of gear you'll get should be a little better than what you got in Vale of Alaris.
Right.
And then there's another tier behind that. We're also offering, the visible armor will be what you've typically expected. It's very class-based. The non-visible armor is now, they're still focused towards certain classes, but we decided to let anybody get them. So that you can just, if you decide you're a warrior and want to get more intelligence, you can.
Kevin, how far in advance of a launch like this do you guys have to pretty much have your zones ready before so the design team can sink their teeth into it? Most people don't know that kind of thing.
We usually do it kind of in 2 phases. We'll do what we call design ready, which is basically all of the stuff not finished in there. And then from that point, we'll finish the polish, and then it goes through the QA process. So generally, it'll be design ready a couple months or so before it needs to be done.
And how far before that do you actually have to start building the zones?
Well, generally from end to end, it's about a 4-month process.
Yeah.
They're big zones, and there's a lot of stuff in them.
So whenever we're going to release a zone, you pretty much have to have started on it 6 or 7 months before.
Pretty much.
At a minimum.
Yeah, at least, in the sort of in terms of thinking about it and how it relates to the story and how it fits in with the rest and that stuff.
I find questions like that interesting I think that a lot of people find those things interesting because you don't realize how much work is involved in one of these games because you never made one and you just want to play it. Like
right.
That's the way most people are.
It still surprises me.
yeah. And then on the flip side, like you have to start way ahead.
Yeah.
But you don't usually get to start your stuff till really close to when we're getting ready to.
It depends.
Yeah.
It definitely depends. I know with autonomous brokering, especially the offline portion, we've been thinking about it. It's been knocking around in our brains, and we've been prepping for it for almost 2 years now. It's been on our list, and it's been kind of in our brains. It's like, okay, to get to autonomous brokering, we need to be able to put in these things first.
Right.
And partially with the inventory revamp that we did, I believe it was last expansion, that was another step on our way to being able to broker offline.
Right. So is it true that a lot of times you'll set up features so that they prepare the way for other features down the line? Does that happen very often?
Not specifically, but if it is a part or something that we can use later on, then it's definitely a plus in the win column for us.
Cool. Oh, hey. There will be no more questions because apparently the screen locked up. Cool.
What's the password?
Yeah, you want to tell me the password over the air?
On the internet. We'll just broadcast it out to everyone.
The number also? Yeah? Okay. No, that's not it.
Capital L.
Oh. Well, now you gave it away. It has a capital L in it.
Yes. It's called
No.
Falling
You got
Wall.
that second one's a symbol?
Yeah,
22.
and that's a 0.
What?
Capital L.
Yeah, I see
At.
that.
At
The number at the end of it?
052.
At 0525?
Um,
You guys type it in, would you? No, that doesn't work. Technical!
Hey!
IT! So I guess we'll just vamp. Anybody can do a song? Can you sing?
I can't really
Anybody?
sing.
No?
No.
See? Can't get there from here, can you?
Did you bring my laptop?
I did. All right. Well, you just read me questions. It's fine.
All right.
Yeah, tell me. This is Amy, everybody. Amy, this is everybody. You may have known her as Server Hamster. Was it Server Hamster A or B?
I like ham.
Server Hamster?
Hammy.
Ham?
Let's see.
See, I told you we should have gone with the iPhone app. So anyway,
Design a zone from start to finish for art.
Say again? I'm
so
sorry.
how long does it take to design a zone from start to finish for art?
It's about a 4-month from end to end, maybe just a little bit longer. I mean, there's a little bit of pre-production work that's done, minor concepting and kind of collecting of reference and that sort of thing. But we generally think of it as a 4-month process.
What kind of stuff is involved in that? I mean, how do you go about building a zone?
Well,
Not to get too far down the rabbit hole, but
yeah, and everybody kind of does a little bit different. But the commonality is, one of the top priorities is to try and build in what we call kind of suspension of disbelief, so that when you're in this environment, you feel like you're in an environment.
Sure.
If it's cold, if it's supposed to be cold, it looks cold.
Yeah.
If you need to put a sweater on, then we did our job right. Kind of thing. But so most people will kind of collect reference to define what this place is, who lives there. A lot of people reference fantasy art. I know a lot of people will like to project, well, in the real world, where would this place maybe be? And then, reference those sections for, architectural details and things that are, appropriate for, how that fits within the storyline. So that's usually kind of the first thing, and that usually moves along pretty quick now.
do you do a lot of photo reference? Do you look around for stuff and then spawn ideas from that, or do you just make it up out of thin air?
It's kind of all of those things. It's an amalgam of everything. We'll start with, some reference, photo reference. Like I said, either it's, maybe fantasy art, and maybe real world places, and then kind of build off from there. And everybody gets their, their fingerprint on it. There's your take on what this place is and how it would look.
Cool.
Who lives there? That's another thing, is to try and give it a real sense of place.
Does that question make any sense to you?
Yes, I think they're talking about what I was mentioning earlier.
Okay, so the question is, what is the new stat feature on non-visible armor?
Yes. I mean, one thing our Chandrock, our items designer, spent time on was being sure that there wasn't as much ambiguity of, is this item an upgrade from the previous item? Because sometimes there would be a little ambiguity whether it was an upgrade or not. So he went to some effort to make sure that it always looked like an upgrade. And then there was also what I mentioned, where non-visible items, they'll still be focused towards a set of classes, typically, like, there'll be a Beast Lord Necromancer item whose stats are sort of focused towards Beast Lords, Necromancers, and Mages. But then we made the item actually all so that anybody can use it.
Cool.
Rate flagging is the next question.
Oh, so back to Adam. No, go right
Yeah.
ahead. It's not really a question in the form that I'm seeing it, so I'm going to read it just like it says on the whiteboard, because I think that will be slightly amusing. Rate flagging keys books.
Yes,
Can you answer that question,
yeah.
please?
Well, rate flagging this
One of my short hands.
rate flagging this expansion is a lot simpler than it has been in the past. We're not adding the keys or the books this time. We do require that the requester of the raids must have done the progression, quests, and missions within those zones to request the raid. And then the raids also will require, some of the later raids will require some of the previous raids to have been done. And that will require the standard, 85-15 split that we do, that allows a few people that haven't gotten the flagging to come in, but most of your guild mates or raid mates will have to have done the previous raid.
Now, just out of curiosity, when you make a change like that, is that done on the design side of the fence or the code side of the fence?
Design side.
Yeah, it's all done on so you can do a huge amount of stuff on the design side.
Right. Now, some of it, like those books from last expansion, dealt with a lot of scripting. There wasn't a real system in the game for it. We just scripted it.
Just to point out what the difference is, what are some of the major code features that were done for this expansion?
It's pretty much everything to do with the UI.
Yeah.
And
Like the Aggro Meter and stuff.
Right, and anything that has to deal with a lot of cross-zone communication. So the Aggro Meter was huge, like most of it, if not all of it, was all done by code. Because it's UI, it's internal numbers in combat. It's a lot of stuff that design doesn't readily have access to. And even if they did have access to it, it's not very quick to do it through the design systems.
Right.
Because design...
So it actually take too
Right.
long to process.
Right,
if the designers
absolutely.
did. Yeah.
Design has a lot of power in EQ, especially through our internal proprietary scripting language.
Right.
But there's just a lot of things that just don't really make sense to do in design. Aggro was one. The collection system. The collection and the Slayer system, the back end is all being done by code. We could have actually implemented both the collection and the Slayer system using design, but it would have been crazy. I mean, we were talking megabytes and upon megabytes onto an individual character file. Just for
Which
a
is
point of
ridiculous,
reference,
yeah.
just for a
Yeah.
point of reference, one character file is roughly, in an average character file, is actually about 300K right now.
Right.
So
So that would be a gross inflation.
Right.
I don't know whether this is interesting to anybody else, but sometimes it's kind of nice to know how this stuff gets made and where it gets made and on what side of the
Right.
fence.
Right.
We have more pseudo questions on the whiteboard. New spells cookie cutter.
Well, I assume
It's kind of like a question.
right. I assume that's a comment on the fact that all we did was upgrade spells for this expansion.
All we did, yeah.
Yes. So for this expansion specifically,
Yeah.
the spells and the AAs are just upgrades of the existing things. We do have plans to add, new spells later,
Right.
which is what you're talking about.
The release we haven't talked about yet.
Right.
Right.
So
Right.
in the future, we will be adding the new spells, and it's not the immediate future, but it's not too far in the future.
We have more plans. After the expansion comes out, we'll start unveiling what's coming next, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that's already in the works.
Right.
Will there be a Shawl 3.0?
Well, there is not with Reign of
That's a
Fear.
real question.
Yes, there will not be a Shawl 3.0 with Reign of Fear.
Right.
We are thinking about it for this future thing. We haven't given you much details
Right.
yet, but again, that's in the future.
Cool. And can we talk about do you have much? Do you guys do much concept art when you're developing these expansions?
Yeah, it fluctuates a lot. There are times when, this particular expansion had a real breadth of zones, and the continuity elements that tied them all together was, pretty straightforward and pretty clear. But there have been other times when that wasn't the case, and so we'll go through and concept, basically the whole stretch of them all. In this, in all cases, everybody kind of does their little visualization studies and
Sure.
things along those lines.
Is it? And I don't. This is not a leading question because I don't know the answer to the question. But in this particular case, because we were essentially reimagining or adding on to the zones that had already existed historically, was there less concept art than normal, or was it
Yeah.
about the same? Because you could kind of extrapolate it on the fly, or did you actually imagine what that extra area would look like before you started?
Yeah, definitely, sort of. When you start with frame of reference like that, obviously it makes it a little bit more straightforward. But in the reimagining of new sections and pieces and POIs and that kind of stuff, it's nice to just visualize them quickly, so that you're not wasting time running down dark alleys.
Cool.
So there was a lot of that.
If you do, it's on purpose. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Are there any new AA abilities?
This fits under the same thing as the spells we mentioned
Yes,
earlier.
it does.
There will be new AA abilities.
Yeah.
They will not ship with Reign of Fear, but there will be new AA abilities.
You might be the right person for this, although it might end up being Adam too. Offline trading.
Yep.
How is that going to work from the player point of view?
So right now, if you are a trader or a buyer, you go to the red side or you go to the blue side of the map, and you set up your broker. And basically, you just go AFK when you're in that mode. Well, offline trading, when you set up yourself in the trader or buyer mode, there'll be a new button at the bottom that says offline mode. As soon as you click that, it'll ask you, do you really want to go offline? And as soon as you say yes, it's going to kick you directly into offline mode, and you will actually be offline, and you can turn off your machine, you can go to another country, and you'll still be online, standing there in the bazaar, and people will be able to still sell to you or buy to you from you directly like they do now.
Cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
I think we probably have one more question, and I'll go ahead and answer this one. The expansion. The question is this the Elastic expansion pack? And the answer is we are going to continue to release content on a regular basis. Some of the content releases will be bigger than others, and we still have some discussions to have about what we're going to call those updates. But we're still going to be putting out tons and tons of updates, no matter what form it is, and the kind of content that you're used to getting, you'll still be getting. It's a fuzzy answer, but it's real. And that's about it for this webcast. Little wild and woolly, but it went okay. I hope that you enjoyed it. We certainly are looking forward to bringing you the expansion, Reign of Fear, the Wednesday after next on the 28th. So thanks, everybody. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
See you next time.
Sony.